Hi, today I'm going to go through an extract response. How should you approach it? Here's a 101 guide. This is something that could come up in GCSE English Literature, AS English Literature and beyond. The skills that you need for an extract response, once you've got a grasp around what it is and what it requires of you, you can then transfer those skills to any given extract for any novel or any text that you're studying. I'm hoping that what I'm going to do in this video is give you some broad principles which you can take away and you can apply no matter what novel or text you are studying. The first place to start is, for a good extract response, you need to distinguish between the what and the how. Okay, so I'm going to give you some examples and explain what I mean. Have a look at this. Lenny is afraid of Curly. Atticus is angry at the way Scout and Jem treat Arthur Radley. Now, these kind of statements are the sort of thing that a candidate will say when they're writing an extract response and they're kind of figuring out what's going on in the extract and they're telling you what's happening. That's completely valid. But what it's missing is the how. Okay, so let me just give you examples now of that. Lenny is afraid of Curly. This is shown because he is cowering and begging George for help. Atticus is angry at the way Scout and Jem treat Arthur Radley. He says, "Stop tormenting that man," and his tone shows that he's determined to stop them from their game of making Boo come out. Now, it's a subtle difference, but in the second example, what we're doing is not just telling the examiner what's happening in the extract, but how the writer is showing us that. And that is the key for a successful extract response. If you only give me the what, there's a real cap on what you can achieve in terms of the grade for your response. You have to focus as well on the how. And now I'm going to give you some stylistic features which you can learn and then you can learn to recognise them or spot them in any given extract. Okay, so the how then. The how is the stylistic features a writer uses in order to convey the what. Okay, so what kind of stylistic features am I talking about? Well, I'm going to go through a list of examples. I'm going to go through a list of stylistic features and I'm going to give you an example so that I can model for you what that looks like in practice in an extract response. Okay, so we're going to start off with the first one, which is vocabulary choices. Now, vocabulary choices can seem a really broad thing. I mean, it's basically language, the words used in an extract. And you might think, well, surely everything I say is going to be about that. But what I'm looking for is this question: why this word in this place? So have a look at the example. He moved with a majesty achieved only by royalty and master craftsmen. He was a jerk line skinner, the prince of the ranch. Now, if that was your extract, it's about Slim in Of Mice and Men, what kind of interesting vocabulary choices are made here? Now, this is an interesting example because I don't know if you spotted this. There's a couple of words that seem a bit out of place for a ranch in California. It says majesty, royalty, and prince. And the use of those three words I think is really significant. Firstly, those words, as I said, are really out of place on a ranch. So they make us kind of pay attention. Why are these three words chosen? And these three words are from the same kind of what we call lexical grouping. All these words are about majesty and royalty. So what does it show us about Slim? Well, these words are drawing attention to the fact that although Slim isn't the boss, to the men, the workers on the ranch, he very much has that role of authority. The boss is a somewhat distant figure, and Curly is obviously very disliked universally, but Slim is someone who has earned the respect of his fellow men, and he is the prince of the ranch. His word is law and everyone respects him. And those interesting vocabulary choices really show us that about him straight away. Okay, next one then, characterization. Again, this can seem like a very broad thing. Characterization, what is that? Well, it's how the thoughts and feelings of a character are made clear. A good writer won't just tell you, he feels scared. A good writer will show you. So in my example then, I've got a quote from To Kill a Mockingbird. "Why were you so anxious to do that woman's chores?" Tom Robinson hesitated, searching for an answer. "Looked like she didn't have nobody to help her, like I says." Now, I love the way that this shows Tom Robinson's kind of navigation of a very difficult situation. He's on trial as a black man accused of raping a white woman. And in his testimony, as he's talked about, repeatedly helping Mayella Ewell out, Mr. Gilmer, the lawyer, is pressing him on why he was so anxious to help her out. The simple answer is that Tom, out of the goodness of his heart, didn't want to walk past and leave her without any help, because it doesn't seem like anyone else in her family is going to help her. But notice the way the thoughts and feelings of Tom are made clear by his hesitation. He doesn't want to say something that would seem really disrespectful about Bob Ewell and the whole family. He doesn't say what he really knows, which is that Bob Ewell is a drunkard and doesn't help Mayella at all. He's quite diplomatic and careful and respectful in his tone of voice, and his choice of words is very careful. That conveys a lot about Tom Robinson, who is a very important symbol in the novel of innocence, the mockingbird. And because the novel's called To Kill a Mockingbird, you could even link that straight to the title and explain how Tom Robinson conveys that. Okay, next up is dialogue. Now, dialogue, wherever people are talking to one another, gives you lots of opportunities to talk about stylistic features. You're going to be looking at how conversations and language convey characters, themes and ideas. So in this extract from Mice and Men, Candy said, hopefully, "You ain't got no gun." "The hell I ain't. Got a Luger. It won't hurt him none at all." Candy said, "Maybe tomorrow. Let's wait till tomorrow." Now, I love the use of dialogue here in Of Mice and Men. This is a really crucial scene where Carlson is really determined to shoot Candy's dog. He says he's old and smells and he doesn't want him in the bunkhouse anymore. But poor old Candy really doesn't want to let go of this dog, his only companion. He says that he had him from a pup. When he says, "Hopefully you ain't got no gun," to Carlson, we can see evidently that Candy is looking desperately for any reason why not to shoot his dog right there and then. When Carlson responds, Carlson's dialogue shows his lack of complete sympathy with Candy. "The hell I ain't. Got a Luger. Won't hurt him none at all." Carlson has the kind of brash personality that he's going to force his will upon Candy, really regardless what Candy says. And Candy's words, "Maybe tomorrow, let's wait till tomorrow," are really poignant. The repetition of tomorrow shows he's absolutely desperate to just postpone it for one more day and have his dog another night. But unfortunately, the world of Mice and Men is a very brutal world. In the 1930s in America, there's no place for people like Candy, the elderly, the infirm. As soon as they get beyond their usefulness, society doesn't care anymore. And what's going to happen to Candy's dog is going to foreshadow what will happen to anyone in that society who is deemed to be no longer useful anymore. Okay, the next one is physical actions. Now, this is how a physical action might present a character to you. I've got an example from To Kill a Mockingbird. "Mr. Tate's boot hit the floorboard so hard, the lights in Miss Maudie's bedroom went on. Miss Stephanie Crawford's lights went on. Atticus and Mr. Tate looked across the street, then at each other. They waited." Now, in this tense part of the novel, Heck Tate realises that Arthur Radley has rescued Scout and Jem and has killed Bob Ewell. Atticus, however, believes his own son Jem is responsible for Bob Ewell's death and persists in saying to Heck Tate that his son needs to face up to what he's done and it shouldn't be covered up. Heck Tate is frustrated that Atticus doesn't see the truth. And in this action of his boot hitting the floorboards, it shows that point of frustration that he's grown to anger and the act of stamping his foot. However, the fact that immediately he looks at Atticus and then waits suggests that he's not a violent character. This is actually quite out of character for him to lose his temper. And so it shows you his physical action of stamping, but then also of pausing while all the lights are going on around them, and hopefully hoping that the neighbours are going to go back to bed and turn the lights off again. Hecate reveals that he isn't that kind of aggressive personality. He's actually just so frustrated he lost his cool for a moment, and now he quickly regains it and continues the conversation with Atticus. The next one is symbols, and this is one of my favourites. This is where you need to ask yourself, are there any objects or people in the story who represent something bigger? And so I've got a couple of examples from 3 different novels. In Lord of the Flies, you've got the conch, which symbolises democracy, fire representing civilization, Piggy's glasses could represent science and progress, and you've got the beast, which is an emblem of evil in human nature, in all of us. In a text like To Kill a Mockingbird, you've got Mayella's red geraniums as a symbol of the better life that she's always longed for. You've got Atticus's glasses as a sign of his education, of his learning and status. The rabid dog is a symbol of the necessity of killing or removing danger from a community. And in the novel of Mice and Men, the red ostrich feathers on Curly's wife's shoes represent her longing for attention and fame. The dead mouse reflects Lenny's obsessions and uncontrolled strength. And Candy's dog represents how the elderly or infirm are treated within society because he has to die. Now, something to look for over the whole extract is the structure of the extract. Now, this is where you need to look for, are there any changes in pace or tension as you work through it? And why? Do any sentences stand out to you? Have a look at this one from To Kill a Mockingbird. Mr. Tate added that Atticus wasn't going to stand there and maintain that any boy Jem-sized with a busted arm had fight enough left in him to tackle and kill a grown man in the pitch dark. Heck, said Atticus abruptly, that was a switchblade you were waving. Where'd you get it? Took it off a drunk man, Mr. Tate answered coolly. Now, I love this section of the extract because this is the point where Atticus finally realises who actually killed Bob Ewell. And I love the subtlety of this because Scout, as a kid, is kind of listening in and narrating it to us and doesn't really fully understand what's going on here. So Hecate is convincing Atticus that there's no way Jem could have fought Bob Ewell off in the pitch dark when his arm was broken, overpowered him and killed him with this kitchen knife. Suddenly, Atticus remembers the switchblade, and this is obviously the weapon that was Bob Ewell's weapon. Bob Ewell's been found with a kitchen knife in his ribcage. That kitchen knife was what Arthur Radley grabbed from his own house before he came out and killed Bob Ewell. So Atticus says abruptly, that was a switchblade you were waving, where'd you get it? In that question, there's a shift, isn't there, in the pace and the tension of the extract. We've had this moment of tension where Hecate stamped hard on the floorboards, the lights started going on. Then he started persistently telling Atticus that Jem couldn't have done it, and then suddenly Atticus's question changes the pace of the extract. Suddenly he breaks into this train of thought with a seemingly random question, but it's actually the key to the whole thing. Mr. Tate's answer, took it off a drunk man, is said coolly. So at this point, there's no more of this kind of argument, there's no more of this real anger and tension. But what there is Hecate subtly communicating to Atticus the truth. He took the switchblade off Bob Ewell's body. He's come up with the story to protect Arthur Radley. His story is that Bob Ewell found the kitchen knife at the dump and then fell on his own knife. The switchblade isn't part of that story. So Hecate took the switchblade, Bob Ewell's actual weapon, off him. Now, because Bob Ewell's known to be prone to drinking, his phrase, took it off a drunk man, doesn't in exact words say, I took it off Bob Ewell, thus protecting the identity of Arthur Radley, but is enough to help Atticus figure out what has actually happened here. Arthur Radley has saved his kids by coming out and killing Bob Ewell. Now, I love the way that there's a subtlety in that dialogue and a swift change in pace and tension, because in a sense, as soon as Atticus gets it, Jem wasn't responsible, a lot of that tension falls away and drops away suddenly. And so if you can pinpoint that moment and explain why, you're onto a really good way of exploring the writer's style and technique. Now, the final one I want to talk about is mood and atmosphere. And really, if you can show what kind of mood or atmosphere is created, to do that, you're really going to need to talk about how the techniques used combine to create an effect. So, for example, if you had a lot of short sentences, a lot of exclamation marks, and a lot of vocabulary about danger, you'd probably get an overall mood and atmosphere of fear. You can also use your knowledge of where the extract belongs in the novel to help consider what the mood is at that point. So if, for example, it's in the trial in To Kill a Mockingbird, you're going to know that this is a big moment in the novel of tension. If it's later in the novel, if it's in Of Mice and Men, at a point where they believe that the dream is possible, then maybe the mood is going to be one of hope. So your knowledge of the text is going to help you decode that mood and atmosphere as well. Have a look at this extract from Of Mice and Men. Curly's fist was swinging when Lenny reached for it. The next minute Curly was flopping like a fish on a line, and his closed fist was lost in Lenny's big hand. George ran down the room. "Let go of him, Lenny, let go." But Lenny watched in terror the flopping little man whom he held. Now, I love this scene, the fight scene between Curly and Lenny in terms of mood and atmosphere. There's obviously such a huge amount of tension as Curly violently hits Lenny again and again and again, and Lenny does nothing. But then, once George communicates to Lenny that he's allowed to fight back and get him, that's when this moment happens. Lenny catches Curly's fist and won't let go. Now, in the first part of that moment, we might feel a surge of hope because we didn't like seeing Lenny get beaten to a pulp by Curly. But very quickly, the balance of power has suddenly reversed. The simile of Curly flopping like a fish on a line really aptly displays that power reversal. Whereas Curly before was the one with the power, slugging Lenny across the face, now Lenny's the one holding on to Curly and he's like a fish on a line. Now the problem here is the atmosphere then twists again because now Lenny's doing another one of his mistakes where he doesn't know his own strength. George immediately runs down the room, and the fact that he's running again is showing the tension of the moment, and now tells him to let go. Now obviously George was the one who told him to fight back, so Lenny's probably really confused at this point. But George knows the danger because obviously Curly's the boss's son, he doesn't want them to get fired. This indicates Lenny's panic reaction as he watches in terror the flopping man he holds. He doesn't seem to know his own strength, and he doesn't seem to have much control over what he's doing. That causes a lot of tension in the atmosphere at this point. There's been a complete reversal of what was happening between Lenny and Curly. Now, in all of these stylistic features, where we're looking at the how a writer conveys something, in all of this, we need to think about something called subtext. Now, the prefix sub usually means under. Think about a submarine, for example, under the surface of the water. And I want you to think about it like this. We've got something that is shallow, something that's deep, and something that is profound. Now, shallow is stuff that's on the surface of the text, really obvious, basic stuff. As we go deeper and even profound, this is what the subtext is all about. You have to read between the lines to work out what the writer's saying underneath. Let me give you some examples. Lenny is frightened because he didn't want to fight Curly and he doesn't know what to do. That's all true, but it's pretty shallow, isn't it? It's very obvious, basic stuff on the surface of the extract. Let's look at this next sentence. The fight between Lenny and Curly shows an example of how Lenny gets into trouble, as George so often says, because he doesn't understand how to respond to others. Now we're going a little bit deeper here because we're taking something specific from the extract and we're drawing from it a general principle about Lenny's character and Lenny's behaviour over the whole novel. We're using our knowledge of the whole text to help us understand the extract in a deeper way, and being able to say things about Lenny's response to other people really makes that go a little bit deeper. Now look at this section. Lenny's powerlessness in the fight reflects his position in society, and his lack of control when he seizes Curly's hand foreshadows how he will accidentally kill Curly's wife. Now at this point we've got to a really profound level of subtext because we've explored the themes and ideas of the novel from this very specific incident in the extract. We haven't gone off on a tangent, but we have taken the example of Lenny's powerlessness in the fight and talked about his position in society as a result of it. We've talked about his lack of control, foreshadowing him accidentally killing Curly's wife later. That shows a really good understanding of Steinbeck's technique here. And so we've moved from the shallow to the deep to the profound. So how can you go deeper? Well, I think it's really asking these three questions. Number one, what is the extract about? That's your shallow. Number two, what is it really about? Beneath the surface, we've got to do a little bit of digging to get beneath the surface, and then we're going to go deeper. And finally, how do you know? That's where it gets really profound and where you start using your understanding of stylistic features to get the top marks. So this might include thoughtful discussion of characters and relationships. It might include you thinking about a character's attitudes and motives behind what they do and what they say. You might speculate or offer tentative judgments about what the writer's really trying to say. Can you link the extract to the novel's themes or even a central message in the whole novel? That's going to get you really good marks. I hope this video's helped you when you're revising on how to approach an extract question. If you like this video and it's helped you, please hit subscribe and look at my study playlist for more ideas on how to approach English literature. Good luck!